So you escaped the matrix, but now what? You see, most people think when they escape the quote unquote matrix that that's it. It's the end all be all. They completed life and that's the end of the story. But what actually happens is once you escape the matrix, you actually find yourself in a whole other matrix. And if you don't master the law of the pendulum, you will continue to fall back into the cycles of constantly waking up, falling asleep, constantly waking up, and falling asleep. And in this video, I aim for you to actually understand the real nature of your mind in this universe so that you don't have to go through this cycle over and over again and be subject to the will of other people. Now, with that out of the way, sit back, relax, and take this information, get your pen and paper out because this is going to be a long one. So, the law of the pendulum. Now, this is the stuff that they usually, keep behind a paywall, especially other esoteric people on this platform, because this is the real shit that actually changes things. I'm pretty sure I'm spelling that wrong, but the law of the pendulum. A pendulum swings back and forth. So if this is a pendulum right here, the pendulum swings this way, and then it comes back and swings the other way. What happens is, let's say over here, the pendulum swings this way. When you escape the matrix, quote unquote, whether that's you waking up to realizing the true nature of reality, or you started a business and you're no longer subject to the will of the system that has control over you because you have financial abundance. But over here, you escape, right? Now, what happens is when you escape, this energy has to swing back this way. It will always swing back this way. Now, what happens is when you escape, you actually become comfortable. Because human nature is human nature. You can't fight it, but you must understand it to work with you instead of against you. When you escape and you finally learned all this beautiful knowledge on what you are, who you are, why you're here, and all that stuff, what happens is that you become comfortable in the escape. This causes you to be less alert, more careless, and these patterns cause you to fall back asleep over here, causing you to fall back into the old patterns that once got you to escape. Now you're facing the new patterns on another level. So now you're back asleep. You're repeating old habits, old choices. And what's happening here is because you've become comfortable in the quote unquote escape of the matrix, now you're falling back asleep because now you're less alert, you're less on your toes because you feel like you figured it out. Okay? Now, what's dangerous about this is that you are 95% subconscious. Just because you got this beautiful discernment, this knowledge that wakes you up and makes you feel like you're better than everyone, doesn't mean that you outruled the subconscious. Okay? The subconscious mind will have power over you 100%, almost 100% of the time if you don't understand why these cycles keep happening. So why does the cycle of escaping lead back to falling back asleep? Well, again, it's because you feel comfortable, right? When you finally escape, let's say you built a business, right? You built a business, it's doing amazing, it's doing well, and you've generated a lot of income. Well, now you're comfortable because your level of baseline consciousness has now risen. Let me explain it this way. Every single person has a ceiling. This ceiling determines the level at which you are able to execute, the level which your mind deems as safe. Okay? We have a baseline. Okay? When our needs are met, we have a baseline. This is our ceiling. Your mind deems this area, this zone, as safe. So anything below this ceiling is deemed as acceptable. Okay? When you start reaching the outside of, when you start reaching the outside of this ceiling, this is where fear is triggered. So above the ceiling, you got fear. Okay? Now what happens is when we reach our baseline, right? Let's say your basic needs is that you need a roof over your head, food, entertainment, a job, a social circle, and that's it, right? When you break out of the old shell of who you once were and then you level up, right? Let's say you get past this fear, you level up, you become a whole new person. This is where you're waking up. Like, this is why you're watching this video. You've woken up. Now you're up here. But because you went up this level doesn't mean you don't have a new ceiling. In fact, you have a new ceiling. So let's move this diagram down here because there's no more space up there. So over here, now you got a new ceiling. Okay? Now you got a new ceiling, which means that once you escape, your needs are met, right? So you're comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you lose alertness, you lose the ability, or you lose the ability to look around and try to keep yourself awake. So now you fall back asleep. You fall back asleep because you're comfortable, and the new comfortability makes you back asleep. And then now you have to wake up and break yourself out of this loop, because the reason why we want to keep waking up and breaking out is because we want to grow. Growth is our mission. Okay? Growth is our mission. So we are constantly going to wake up, fall back asleep, wake up and fall back asleep. But how do you actually stop this process of falling back asleep? Because when you are awake 100% of the time, you have control over your reality. You have control over your mind. You have control over the things around you. Think about it this way. All right. In a lucid dream, I don't know if you guys ever lucid dream before, but I'm an active lucid dreamer. I love that shit, okay? When you're in a dream, without lucid dreaming, you are subject to the will. Things are just happening to you, okay? Things are just happening to you. But when you become lucid, you become aware that you're in a dream. And when you're aware you're in a dream, you can actually control the dream to the fullest extent. You can literally do anything you want. Being awake in this world is the same thing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you can make a sword out of your hand and fly whatever, but the same principles apply. When you don't realize that you're asleep, someone else who's awake can control you. You know, it's that simple, which is why the media and the world, they use this one powerful tool that you must understand. One powerful tool, and that powerful tool is sedation. Oh, spelled that wrong. They use sedation because sedation makes you comply. okay? Sedation is meant to make you comply, is meant to make you stop accessing your power. Okay? Why does the world want this to happen? Well, because if more people actually wake up and realize that they are the controllers or they can control their own reality, then whatever is going on in the world right now wouldn't matter because other people would be able to do the things they want to do. Okay? Let me get a drink real quick. Damn, that water does not taste good. I need to fix that. Okay? So they use sedation. Like I said, when you're in a lucid dream and you finally wake up, you're able to control the dream. So that's kind of the whole point of realizing this, of why this even happens. So the law of the pendulum is just understanding that there's cycles in this world. There are cycles within cycles, okay? If you were to see this as the matrix, okay, then there's a bigger matrix, and then there's one even bigger than that. So does the matrix change? Does this whole thing change? No. You're just realizing that you're waking up in the levels and you just keep going and going. But each time you level up, that's the thing. It's like a video game. Every time you go through this process, you level up. And that's like the real power of this whole thing, because if you were to just not level up, you'll be in the same place. So every single time you go through this, you level up. So is going through the sleeping and the wake cycle a bad thing? No, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either. It's actually neutral. Okay? It's actually neutral. If you fall back asleep in the level that you deem this is where I want to be, that's okay. There's no harm in staying in the place you feel like is most best for you, granted that you tried leveling up. But the thing about that is that we inherently want to grow. We want to grow. So eventually you're not going to be satisfied. Which leads to the cycle of waking up and falling back asleep, because you're always going to want more unless you're actually content with what you have, which a lot of humans don't have because they have superficial purpose. But, okay, this whole thing right here is getting into the meat of the video, because what you need to understand is the reason why this happens is comfortability, okay? Now, how do you stop this from constantly, putting you in this cycle? Because you are able to control this. You don't have to fall back asleep, and here's how you're gonna do it. You need to let go. Okay? Letting go is what helps you stay aware of your surroundings 100% of the time, not only by doing the mantras of saying that you're aware, you're awake, you know what you're doing right here, right now, in this point in time, but letting go of whatever outcome you desire, because the more you cling on to something, the more you attract what you don't want. Okay? So, like the pendulum, when you swing to one side and you're awake, you've gotten the things that you feel like you deserve or whatever, now it has to swing back, which means that a lot of shit that you don't want to happen is going to happen. That's just a law of the universe. There's no such thing as constant greatness, okay? There's a balance in forces, there's positive and negative, and if you think that just living in this fantasy of positive all the damn time. It's just not going to happen because you need to let go. This is where the quote unquote having a good life or whatever comes in, because when you put pressure on good, just like a magnet, opposites attract. So you're gonna get the experience of bad, okay? Because life is a balance, okay? There's positive and negative. You got the pressure. If you put pressure on good without just letting go of what that is, meaning if you just put, let me explain it this way, okay? The highest form of intelligence is being able to look at something without judgment, okay? If you're able to look at both of these things and not have judgment on it, then it won't have an effect on you. You understand what I'm saying? You're human, you're gonna go through shit all the damn time, but your perception of that event is what changes the energetical force, and it makes you actually, you know, not have to live in a cycle of bullshit all the time. Okay, so what's another thing that you could do to let go and also keep yourself from not falling asleep all the damn time? Well, another thing is mantras. You know, that's what the whole point of mantras are. One thing that I like to do when I wake up, especially when I'm doing something, when I'm consciously need to be aware of what I'm doing, especially right now as I'm recording this video, I tell myself this quote. I am awake. I am aware. I am aware of what I'm doing. And I am aware of my surroundings. Okay, this simple quote lets you come back to reality. Because the thing about it is that since I'm actively lucid dream, the one thing that activates the lucid dream is literally me saying that, oh wait, this is a dream. Now, if you were to take that same energy and apply it to your waking life by telling yourself, I am awake, I am aware of what I'm doing, and I am aware of my surroundings. What happens is that you bring full awareness to your current moment, present in time. And in this little pocket of awareness, you're able to do miraculous things. You could tap into your full creativity. You could tap into, you know, other levels of quote unquote consciousness or whatever. But in this state, you're actually able to make intentional choices and actually influence the things around you, because most people don't have intention. Okay? There's intentional purpose and superficial purpose. Most people are not living intentional. Most people are just going about life, going with the flow. By the way, if you're hanging out with someone that's going with the flow, don't hang around with that person, because you need to have intention, especially in the world that we live in today. You need to have intentional purpose, okay? When you are fully aware that you're in this present moment right now, you are awake, you are aware, and you're aware of what you're doing, what you're watching, and how you're feeling, right? In this pocket of awareness, you can create intention. So what is intention? Intention is just focus. Okay? Focus. Intention is literally just focusing your energy to a single point on what you want it to do. So if I want to grow this YouTube channel, which I'm doing right now. My intention is that I'm focusing on making this video so that this video can reach the right people, and then it starts growing this channel. That is intentional. Superficial purpose would be, I just want views. But no, that's not my purpose. My purpose is to reach the right people so I can help those who want to take control of their life and their destiny. I coach 6 to 8 figure entrepreneurs, and this is what I help them do. So, intentional purpose. When you are asleep, right, and you fall back into the dream or the dream state, you can't have intention. You can't have intentional purpose, because when you're in that state, you're just letting things happen to you. You're just going about life and letting things happen to you, and you can't create anything from a place that you can't even realize that you're in this place to begin with. Let me explain something to you. Okay. Plato explained this allegory of the cave. Over here, we got these prisoners. Now, these prisoners were born in this cave, and they're strapped to this wall. And over here, all they can see are these shadows casted on the wall, because there's also a fire behind them and an exit, right? So they got these shadows on the wall casted by passerbys walking through, and they're seeing this. Now, because the prisoners believe, or because the prisoners were born in this cave and all they saw their entire life was the shadows on the wall, they think that this is reality. Okay? Without them realizing it, their whole basis of reality is by people passing by, and they're not even aware that they're creating this whole reality for these people, right? Now, these prisoners were put there, obviously, and the allegory gets deeper than that. But one day, one prisoner finally escapes. He escapes the cave, and then he realizes that, oh shit, the shadows on the wall aren't real. Oh my God, this is insane. I must come back and tell the others. So he comes back and he tries to tell the others, yo, listen, these shadows on the wall, they are not real, bro. It's not real. There's so much stuff outside. But because the prisoners actually fight to protect the illusion, they actually end up fighting this guy. They don't want to leave. They don't want to escape and find out that stuff that lies beyond the veil is much better, because they are comfortable in the illusion. They're comfortable in the illusion, right? Basically, the reason why this allegory is so powerful is because the prisoners who are stuck in the cave, they can't do anything about it because they're stuck in a false reality. Now, because they don't realize that they're in a cave, they can't escape the cave. Because the first rule to controlling anything is realizing what it is in the first place. Which is why when you have an alcohol addiction, you go to an AA meeting, the first step to conquering addiction is admitting that you have an addiction. So, when you're in a state of constantly falling back asleep due to comfortability, you're now subject to the will of things on a higher level, because there's always going to be forces, there's always going to be energy that's always trying to get things out of you because they want your energy. You have this energy field, right? This is called loosh, which is a fancy word for just energy, right? The way things work is that there's a duality. Okay, there's duality. When you cross a barrier into a higher plane of existence, and I'm not talking about this in like some crazy way. I'm just talking about like your mind has been freed from the shit that has been, told to you for years upon years. And now you realize that you actually can take control of yourself and your life, right? What happens is that there's a balancing force in nature. When you level up, right, you become comfortable, and then the forces, the life around you starts to put you back asleep to start extracting more energy out of you. Why is that? Who cares? Point is that this happens, okay? So the one way to actually stop yourself, and the most important way to stop yourself from falling into the trap of falling back asleep so that you're consciously aware almost all the time so you can co-create your reality, blah, 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 is to understand that you need to let go, because when you attach yourself to things, you start anchoring yourself in those things. So what do I mean by that? So as humans, we have an innate ability to grow, right? Growth is this way. Non-growth is this way. It's just continuing this way, right? When you anchor yourself to things, let's say like it's a car. When you anchor yourself onto these things, you no longer have the ability to grow because you're holding on to this. Okay, in ancient Egypt, okay, this is actually what explains this a whole lot better. In ancient Egypt, when you died, they had this belief called the scale of Mayat. And what happens is, when you pass on, they put your heart on the scale and a feather on the other side. And if your heart weighed more than a feather, then the god Amit will eat you and you are done, right? So why is this important? Okay, because when you are attaching yourself to things, whether that's superficial purpose or that's things of that nature, what happens is that your heart actually anchors you in that state. And what happens is that you can't grow. And that's the whole point of life. That's the whole point of everything, is constant growth, metamorphosis. That's the point of all this stuff. You're here to grow, okay? When you attach yourself to those things, you no longer are able to grow. So, paradoxically, okay, when you wake up and you're constantly trying to go in that direction, you actually cling on to that, okay? When you cling on to being aware or the spiritual or whatever, you actually start getting the exact opposite. You start to become more asleep the more spiritual you try to be, or the more aware you try to be in that sense. Now, I did say you have to be, tell yourself you're aware and all that stuff. That is just a great exercise to make yourself consciously aware. But if you attach your identity, which is when you attach your heart to the identity of being awake and being spiritual and all that stuff, you actually you attract the opposite, and that's why you fall back asleep. So what do you need to do? You need to let go. You need to let go. Stop putting judgment on things. Allow things to be the way they are and allow yourself to be you, the 100% version of you. When you start putting judgment, and when I mean judgment, I mean like attaching yourself to these identities, attaching yourself to these things, you become stationary and you can't grow. The reason why, Exactly. You can't grow. All right? Growth is inevitable. Growth is painful. It's going to happen all the damn time. But if you don't understand these simple principles, then you're going to be caught in a cycle of constantly waking up and falling asleep. And then you look back 20 years from now and wonder why nothing has really changed. Okay? Because, and it's okay, because the thing about this is all this esoteric knowledge has been scattered across everywhere. And there's like, you know, you have to like, it feels like the black market. You got to go find it in certain locations, shit like that. But this is what I aim for these videos to do, to give you this knowledge so that you can take control of your mind and understand the true nature of the world that you live in. Now that we understand why falling asleep is detrimental, even though like some people might actually prefer that, now let's go on to what you need to do moving forward. Because all of this stuff, background information, is cool to know. Now that you're aware of what I just spoke about, now you can consciously move forward with this information. But how do you continue to move forward? How do you stop? Or how do you make sure that the next time you find yourself in this cycle, that you actually break out a lot faster than you would? Okay. Damn. Hold on, there's like stuff on this board. I need to clean this board, man. This is looking disgusting. Okay. So the path forward. Okay. The path forward is actually quite simple, but that's kind of the thing about human nature, is that when we think things are simple, we actually don't value that because we want things to be very complex, because we think complexity means that it's good. But it's actually quite simple. The path moving forward is becoming someone who detaches themselves from everything. Now, that doesn't mean you don't care about things, but you need to master the law of detachment. Okay. Master the law of detachment. If something is pissing you off, okay, instead of reacting, because you're going to be reactionary, okay, the difference between the people who get to the next level and the people who stay exactly where they are is the difference on how they react to situations. Because remember, life is 90% what you react to and 10% what happens. So you got to ask yourself, if you're in a situation and it's irritating you and it's pissing you off, think about what you can do in that situation differently. Because your natural instinct, which is your 95% over here, is going to be reacting in a certain way to that situation. What I tend to do for myself is, if something is irritating me or something is bothering me, instead of just reacting out of spite, I sit back and ask myself, what would me reacting this way actually do for not only me, but the situation in the first place? Because when you are reactionary, you don't think. You're just tapping into the old patterns and habits that you have, and you're just probably going to say something you didn't mean to say, but you actually did, and now shit is all fucked up, and you can't go back to it, right? You need to detach from these things. When you start, like I said, when you attach yourself to something, you just anchor yourself there and you can't move and you can't grow. But when you detach from this, you allow yourself to finally freely move up, constantly back and forth. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's gonna be easy, because it is natural for us to attach ourselves to specific things to give ourselves value, because that's just how it is. Whether that's your goal to become someone who's a millionaire or to become someone who's super spiritual, whatever that looks like for you, when you attach yourself to those identities, you just can't move forward, because now your identity has locked you into place, like how in quantum physics, is locked into superposition and it just cannot change. Oh my God, right? Here's what's interesting. Because the law of detachment is not just a fancy Buddhist thing that people be saying, all right? There's like a literal scientific event called the quantum Zeno effect. Oops, spelling that wrong. Okay. So the quantum Zeno effect states that the longer you stare or the longer you put energy towards a single thing, the more it locks it into position. Okay. So let's say you're going through a tough time right now. Let's say your business is losing money. Let's say you're losing a friend or a family member, or I don't mean like death. I'm talking about like in terms of like, you know, you're losing touch with them and it's not looking good, right? The more you put your focus, the more you focus on an outcome, the more it locks this outcome into place and it doesn't change. So it's kind of funny because this was so interesting about this, okay? Because reality is so fucking weird, man. And I'm gonna get more into that as the video goes along because we're just getting started, okay? When you focus on an outcome and you put so much pressure, right? Oh, spelled that wrong, whatever. When you put so much pressure on a specific thing, it doesn't allow that thing to grow. So if I were to keep staring at this marker will not change. The only way to get this marker to change is if I let go of this marker and let this marker come in. So now I can see that this is a new marker. Oh shit. Things are falling over here. Oh, okay, hold up. Yeah, I'm not cutting this out. The video is gonna stay in. Okay, so when you focus on stuff like this, it locks into position. And it's the same thing about the quantum Zeno effect. When you stare at a particle, it just locks it into place and it can't move because the observer effect is just watching it. It's kind of shy, you know? It's like, oh, don't watch me. But you're watching it, so it locks it into place. So this little behavior right here is what's keeping people in a constant state of trying to achieve things or try to stay in a certain state, and then they actually get the opposite, okay? Because, you know, people who wake up from the Matrix or whatever, they feel a superiority complex because they feel like they realize something that 99% of people don't realize. And while that may be true, that doesn't mean you're immune to the rules, okay? There's rules here. That's how we exist. There's rules to reality and there's rules to physicality. So, what's interesting about this is reality is a mirror. And what's really interesting, sorry about that. What's really interesting about reality being a mirror is that it's paradoxical because the things you want to get out of it is just not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. So, let's say your goal is to have $1 million. Let's just make it simple, right? Let's say your goal is to have $1 million, right? Well, the version of you right now doesn't have $1 million. So you're going to act in according to the way that your identity confirms that you don't have $1 million, which means that you're going to wake up with the same habits, beliefs, and experiences, which causes reality to only reflect back to you which it already deems as, real. So how do you break this little paradox? And this is like the mirror paradox, okay? Because if you were to go into a mirror right now, if you wanted to change, you have to introduce new things. You can't just sit there and be like, change, or think about change. It's not going to happen. In order to break this little illusion, you need to introduce new things. And what's interesting about this is that your mind has the ability to do this. Your mind has the ability to create things, create thoughts, accept thoughts, okay? And this is the only way you're actually able to break this little mirror right here, because your mind is able to move places without your body moving, okay? Because your mind is fourth dimensional. Yeah, sorry, my cat was just running around and shit. Your mind is fourth dimensional. So if you want this mirror to change, you need to introduce new things. So that means you need to wake up and have new habits, new beliefs, new experiences, and then the mirror will change. So if I add a hat to this guy in the mirror, well, this mirror is going to also have a hat. It's that simple. The universe only reflects back to you that which you are. So if you are not a person who is able to be capable of making $1 million, you will not be the person who has $1 million. See the difference? See, the goal is not to just wake up and have $1 million. The goal is to wake up as the person who's able to actually do it. Sorry, that was just mad weird. I thought someone touched my door. Okay. Sorry to get off the track, man. That was like some weird supernatural shit. Anyways, okay. So, in order for you to change this mirror, you must change yourself. And that's kind of the whole core of what to do next after you escape. Because when you escape, once you free your mind, it doesn't mean that you're automatically just going to be given everything that you want. Okay, that's not how this works. You must understand the principles and use them to your advantage. So if you want something to change, introduce the change. Your mind has the ability to grab things from the metaphysical, the world that we can't see, and bring it to this existence. Your mind literally operates on the fourth dimension, which is time. And why is that important? Because your mind can conceive. My mind, your mind, is able to think of a reality that we want to live in and be there instantly. Right now, I'm in Cabo. You know what I mean? In my mind. That's how it works. Your mind is able to pull things from that existence into this new existence. And then when you change yourself, the reflection changes for you. It changes with you, okay? If you tell yourself, damn, I'm not going to be good at this, well, the mirror is going to be like, yeah, you're right. If you tell yourself, I'm amazing and great, the mirror is going to be like, yeah, you're right. Because at the end of the day, this whole world is just an inner reflection of yourself and your mind. Everything else is just an outer reflection of you, okay? It's just an outer reflection of you. So if there's something wrong in your life and you're trying to blame things or whatever, look at yourself, because you can't change anything out here, because outside doesn't exist, okay? There's no existence outside of this existence. You know, there's no such thing as non-existence. Think about it right now. Can you think about non-existence? No, because it doesn't fucking exist. So You only know for sure 100% that you are alive and you're existing in this little world right now. That's the only thing you know for certain. Okay? And because you're literally talking to a damn mirror, everything that you're facing, every single problem that you're facing, whether you're falling asleep, waking back up, going through cycles and cycles and cycles, is all a reflection of you. And that's something hard to grasp, you know, because we like to put blame on other things. We like to blame our team. We like to blame our friends, our family, not realizing that every single problem has brought upon yourself was because of you. Okay? If you want the mirror to change, introduce the change. It's that simple. There's no magic to it. You're not gonna fucking bend reality with your hands and shit. No. You introduce the change by changing yourself, changing your beliefs, the habits, the things you do in this world, and that's how things start to materialize, and that's how you transurf reality. And that's how the pendulum swings back and forth, because the pendulum is always going to swing back and forth. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have things that seem to be like that after you. But at the end of the day, the only thing that can stop you is you. Okay? So the path forward is actually quite simple. Just keep pushing forward. I know that seems like a no shit Sherlock kind of explanation, but that's just the reality of this whole thing. Because you know what I've noticed is that most people click on things hoping to get a trick or a hack to hack the system. Okay, here's a news flash. You can't hack reality. Why? Because reality is a mirror. You can't hack a mirror. A mirror is only a reflection. The only thing you could do is introduce new things into the mirror, but that's not hacking anything. That's just introducing new things. You can't hack anything, okay? Make that very clear. If you're looking for some sort of hack or some sort of easy way out by watching these kinds of videos, then, you know, I don't know what to tell you, because that's just not the reality of this world. That's just not true, okay? If you want things to move forward from you, you must be willing to change. But change is painful because it's scary, okay? Change is scary. The mind doesn't like change. It fights to protect what it believes to be true, okay? What you believe to be true, your mind will fight tooth and nail to make sure that it's true. So how do you persevere through these trying times? Because what's difficult is that, you know, nothing can get you to do anything. There's only influence. Influence can only influence you the more you're willing to actually let it happen. So if you're going through something, you know, if you're going through something tough, whether that's with your business, with your life in general, the only thing that can influence you is if you let things, if you allow those things to influence you. So what you need to do in these situations, especially because it's hard to, you know, detach ourselves from our emotions, is realize that this is just a fucking game. Okay? Sit back, laugh, chill out, bro. Take off the VR glasses, bro. This is just a game. Okay? This is not real. Okay? I know that sounds crazy to say online, and I probably would be put in a psych ward if I said this a few years ago. But this is a fucking game, bro. Chill out. Stop taking life so seriously. Stop taking seriously what the gods made for fun. I heard that quote actually earlier today on Instagram. You know, the only reason why we suffer is because we take seriously what the gods have made for fun. Okay? you got to realize that when you put yourself in this perspective and you're able to see yourself outside the box, you're able to actually influence your decisions and your reality. Because here's the nature of being able to do this, right? Because this is very difficult to do, okay? Being able to, ooh, I think I just broke this. Okay, well, being able to look outside your perspective and see things as they are, okay? This is a very difficult thing to do, but it's actually very possible. You do it all the time. When you have empathy for someone, you actually put yourself in their shoes. You can do the same for yourself, but it's hard to do it because you're flying too close to the sun. It's hard to see your own shit. It's kind of like this, like, you know, you can't really see it. But when you practice putting yourself in this perspective right over here, you're actually able to see these situations and these things and not react to them in a way that will actually be detrimental. Because at the end of the day, the law of the pendulum, energy must swing back and forth. So if you're constantly swinging the way the pendulum wants you to be swung, you'll be subject to the will of falling back into other matrices within the matrices on some Rick and Morty shit, right? So the goal of staying awake, the real way to stay awake and not be subject to the will of the energy swinging back and forth is to be able to look at yourself at this perspective and realize that, yo, this is not even like, it's not even that serious, bro. I'll wake up. I'll come back stronger tomorrow. This ain't even gonna affect me. Once you start letting things affect you, then you feed that other energy what it wants. It's your loosh, your energy. When you start feeding it what it wants, it starts bringing more of that because that's just how energy works. So if you feed into those things, you constantly feed into this. It's kind of like how overthinking works, right? Look at this. Okay. This is you. You are the observer. Okay? Down here, these are thoughts. Okay? These thoughts just pass by. You are not your thoughts. Okay? These things just pass by. When you start focusing on this, what happens is that this starts branching off into subsidiary versions of this thought. Okay? And it keeps going and it keeps fucking going, and then your mind is just flooded with overthinking and you don't know what to do and you're paralyzed. Okay? It's the same way this works when you allow outside forces to start having control over you. Now, if we were to flip this, right? This is you, and these are outside forces. Okay? These are events stuck in traffic. These are events that, you know, like your business partner fucked you over or whatever. These things are passing by, and the goal of these things is to extract. Extract energy. Okay? And when you focus on that and you give this thing the time of day, what it's going to do is going to literally produce more of that result. Because basically it's like, oh, you reacted. All right, let's do more. Let's do more. We need to get this. They live off this shit. Those things live off of that. So when you're reactionary and you don't have the discipline, the mental stillness, the calmness, the stoicism to actually just sit there and just let things happen without reacting a certain way or reacting in a way that feeds those things, you're just going to produce more of this result. Okay? Same thing with escaping the matrix. Okay? When you escape, there's going to be outside influences that want you to go back to sleep, because when you go back to sleep, you fall back into the system. Okay? And when you fall back asleep, you're now subject to the will of somebody else. Your intention is no longer potent because it has nowhere to go. It doesn't know where to go. Versus when you are aware of yourself and you're aware of your surroundings and what's going on while you're doing it and while you're here, now your intention is deadly. It's like a knife, like a katana, because you can focus it where you want it to go, thus creating the things and the reality that you want. Okay? So this right here is what you're up against. Okay, you're up against, and here's the thing. What's interesting about this is that some people will look at this and say that I'm talking about the outside world outside of you. That doesn't exist. This whole battle is you. This whole thing, these outside forces, these things that want you, it's you. You are dragging yourself in these other directions. You are the one that you're facing. It's you against you. Okay? Now that you realize this, now that I've given you the rose-colored glasses, and now that I've given you the information to make you fully aware of what's going on right now, now it is your job to constantly uphold the teachings and the awareness that you naturally have. Because if you don't, well, you already know what you don't. What happens if you don't? You just spent an hour listening to what happens if you don't. So the goal of this whole thing is not to avoid the cycle, but to understand and control the cycle. Because avoiding the cycle only puts you further back in the cycle, just like the law of magnets, okay? One way, the other way, and then you are in the middle, okay? The more you start gripping on and holding on to something, the more the opposite comes in, which is very fucking paradoxical. Why is it that when we want things, we get the exact opposite? It's because energy is a magnet. It's a magnet. You get exactly what you don't want the more you focus on it. The more you grip onto it, the more it fights back by sending you the shit that you don't want, okay? You ever notice, like when you're going through traffic and you're like hoping that you're not late, and then you end up being late? It seems like the world is out to get you so that you're late. You know what I mean? And everything is nuanced, obviously, but it's just funny how things work that way. When you start taking note of the things around you and you're like, fuck. Like, it seems like the world is out to get you, but it's actually just you. It's just you are out to get yourself. You're in this battle with yourself, okay? There's no outside forces. Nothing is stopping you except you, okay? Now, what I hope for you to gain out of this video is the ability to understand that controlling or falling into the cycle is not the issue. Well, it is the issue, but understanding that you can actually control this whole cycle that you're in and be able to see things from a bigger perspective, because this right here is what your mind or the world doesn't want you to know, okay? This, you being able to actually see this and take control of it is the number one, what's the name of it? The number one power to actually controlling your reality for the better. Because without this, you're just going to be subject to the will of your own mind. But here's one more thing. You must maintain this right here is the core of this entire video. If you made it this far, I specifically waited to say this because maintaining is the one thing that actually keeps things the way they are. So if you're in a state that you're happy with or not, whatever, you need to maintain this level. You need to constantly reinforce the identity, the habits, the beliefs, everything in order to consistently be able to take control of the cycle that is waking up, falling asleep, waking up and falling asleep. You must maintain that level of awareness. You must maintain that identity. You must maintain the entire thing, because that's the one thing that these gurus online don't tell you. They tell you, oh, do this, do that. oh, co-create your reality, but they don't tell you you need to maintain that shit, my guy. This is the only way this shit works. If you can't maintain, then you are just going to be stuck in the same cycles over and over again, wondering why nothing is changing. And that is just not a life I want you to live. And if you're watching this video, chances are you already are aware of some of these principles I taught you or showed you in this video. And if you're an entrepreneur who is facing anything of this nature, I work with 6 to 8 figure entrepreneurs down below, and I coach them and I work with them through their problems so that they can start printing without doing more. Now, if that's interest to you, go to the link in the description. If not, I have resources for you, and you need to maintain. And that's it.